Hello and welcome to the Open SAP course, SAP Digital Supply Chain from Design to Operate. My name is Patrick Crampton-Thomas and I'm the head of our digital products and asset management lines of business in SAP Solution Management. In this session, which is module 6 of the course, I'm going to cover the Operate part of the course, which is how we use SAP Asset Management to operate. So with that said, I wanted to start with a few observations about what we're seeing in our customers. So if we look at the slides here, on the left-hand side, what we can see actually is, in the bottom left, a lot of companies have spent a lot of time in the last years standardizing their asset management operations, adopting ISO 55000 standards, for example, to become more efficient in how they manage the work orders around maintenance, how they schedule the maintenance, and how they bring that to the field through mobile. And then in the top left, what you can see actually is a lot of companies want to become more predictive in how they manage their maintenance. But on the right-hand side of this chart, what you can see actually is that companies are not really able to do this. I see two reasons, right? Part of it is they may have the data from their assets and from sensors, but not be able to process it and not be able to combine it in the context of their maintenance operations and business processes, or actually may not have access to that data at all. So companies want to connect and get sensor-based data from their assets, but actually are finding that difficult to do predictive maintenance. So that's kind of what we see in the market. So then we need to think how companies are responding to that. And it's actually about adopting new business processes around asset management. And it can begin, a lot of it is about collaboration. So how manufacturers of equipment and operators of that equipment then collaborate. The manufacturers want to sell more value-added services. Maybe they're selling software with their products, content with their products, or maintenance services. And actually the operators of the assets want that, right? They want the supplier of the equipment to take more responsibility for the maintenance and to provide better content. So we do see sort of new collaborative business models, as well as increased use of standardization, adopting ISO standards, for example, in asset management, especially in regulated industries. So this is some of the response that customers are doing. And then we look at SAP's asset management and where that fits in the design to operate process. Clearly, we're at the end of the process. We've designed the equipment, we've manufactured, shipped, and installed it. So now I'm operating it. And in the context of design to operate, I think asset management is actually really at the heart of that. And it shows that, you know, we're not a standalone activity, because the asset that we are operating today was born right back in the design stage. So this idea of the asset and having a digital twin of the asset, and actually that digital twin of the asset was born during the design phase. You know, then it was made in manufacturing and really configured. So now I have the serial numbers. Then I install it. So now I have the functional location. I can see where the asset is and how it relates to other assets. And then actually, of course, operate the asset in maintenance. And it's closed loop. So in the maintenance world, I need to reinstall a new component or maybe re-engineer the asset. I might need to now collaborate with the designer of the assets again for new modules and enhancements. So really, the digital twin of an asset is at the heart of this whole design to operate process. And by having such a digital twin allows me then the collaborative processes between the manufacturer on one hand and the operator of the asset on the other. So then we look at SAP's suite of applications and what we're offering our customers to help manage that process. And it begins actually with the core in our ERP and S/4HANA, where we have plant maintenance, we have work scheduling of our asset operations, and we also hook up and connect to mobile so that I can manage that work order environment out in the field. So our traditional sort of approach to asset management begins with optimizing those work order management operations. But then we build on that, and what SAP announced at the end of last year was a new suite of applications called SAP Intelligent Asset Management. It's a new cloud suite. It connects and sits on top of our ERP or S/4HANA and brings a whole new range of capabilities to do more intelligence-based asset management. And this is what we call SAP Intelligent Asset Management, represented above the yellow line on this chart. And very importantly, that cloud suite, which consists of Asset Intelligence Network, Asset Strategy and Performance Management, and Asset Predictive Maintenance and Service, along with Predictive Engineering Insights, all shares the same common core. So the blue representation is in this chart, what we call Asset Central, is simply a shared data foundation then for all of my asset intelligence that I need in my business. We call this Asset Central. So this is kind of the suite that allows us now to do new collaborative business processes. It allows me to connect the assets and do sensor-based monitoring, so I get real-time insights and condition monitoring of the assets. I can then add to that the predictive algorithms and so on, so that I can improve my maintenance and ultimately actually collaborate not just inside my business but also outside. So let's take a little bit more look there and look at the innovations that we've been focusing on. They begin with S/4HANA. So we have many customers using our traditional ERP for maintenance. So what we've done a lot in S/4HANA is really work on the usability. We've applied Fiori UIs to many of the work processes in ERP as we move to S/4HANA. We've added sort of natively embedded analytics so that as I'm going through my business processes, I can analyze the data and get real-time insights for dashboarding and this type of thing about my maintenance performance. And also what you see in this chart is an example of a graphical map with some ring fencing. And so this is the geo framework. So in S/4HANA, we can locate all our assets based on where they are geographically. And this is very helpful for field assets that are out in the field, maybe linear assets, for example, assets that I need to group together in some geographic way, and then actually combine that geographical map with the business transaction so the engineer or technician gets that information right on their mobile device. So this is where we focused in S/4HANA. Then we move into the new suite, the SAP Intelligent Asset Management suite, which sits on top of that. And actually the first application here is really about how can I pull all my asset intelligence into one place, right? So the SAP Intelligent Asset Management for asset networks is then allowing me to create a central repository. And that now allows me, instead of operating assets operations locally, I can now begin to adopt shared services for asset management, just as companies have done for procurement and for HR in the past. Now actually we can operate our asset management operation as a shared service inside the business. And this is one of the core capabilities of the Asset Intelligence Network from SAP. Once I've centralized all that intelligence about my assets, then I can use the network part of AIN. And the network part of Asset Intelligence Network allows me to not just collaborate internally, but also with suppliers and manufacturers, right? So if I'm an operator of an asset, I can now collaborate with the supplier of the asset. They can provide me content. They can provide me value-added services like maintenance services, risk services, etc. They can provide me firmware updates, maybe help me with spare parts. So now I can actually collaborate through the Asset Intelligence Network with my suppliers of the assets, and the suppliers, of course, can collaborate with their customers on the other hand. So this is where we begin the journey with the Asset Intelligence Network. And what you can see on this chart then is a sort of example of some of those services that we can begin to use. I've mentioned things like spare parts collaboration, things like notifications. Maybe I find a quality concern with an asset, we need to upgrade a component, so I can send those notifications to my customers. As well, actually, a lot of operators of assets are asking their suppliers not just to provide the physical asset, but actually to provide a digital package of the asset, like the digital twin. And this can be shared over the network between the two parties, so that at any moment in time, they have a common view of the digital twin and the status of that asset. So this is the Asset Intelligence Network. Then we move into the next application that we have in our Intelligent Asset Management suite, which is what we call SAP Asset Strategy and Performance Management. So this allows us to build and extend the model that used to be in ERP with things like risk and reliability data and intelligence to better run my assets. So on the risk side, we can set up criticality matrices, so I can have different aspects of risk around the assets. Are they likely to fail? Yes or no? If they do fail, what's the impact? Is it high or low? What's the cost, high or low? And I can begin to build up criticality matrices in asset strategy and performance management. So those matrices will then allow me to segment my asset portfolio and determine the best strategy to maintain, some topics on a planned cycle, irregular maintenance, and other assets, actually more critical ones perhaps, I would really get into predictive maintenance, even predictive sort of simulation, really connect those assets with sensors and monitor them closely so that they don't let me down. So this is what asset strategy and performance management is doing in terms of that risk and criticality management. Then we get into the other aspect of this solution is allowing me then to run a reliability-centered maintenance, or RCM, processes, so that now I can take into account things like the failure modes from my suppliers, the failure mode analysis, root cause analysis, around the assets as well, and actually manage that in the context of RCM. So asset strategy and performance is also covering the RCM processes. Then we step into the next area, right? I have my asset intelligence network. I'm planning and managing the strategy for my assets. Well, now what I want to do is actually connect the assets using sensors, using Internet of Things, so that I can do sensor-based condition monitoring or real-time condition monitoring of my important assets. And of course, these days, many assets that I acquire, particularly greenfield assets, all come, pretty well with sensors, sensor technology embedded. So this is readily available, and we need to be able to consume that sensor data, and that's where SAP Predictive Maintenance and Service comes in. So now I can connect to the assets, I can feed the sensor data in, and then I can, on the one hand, actually do very simple condition monitoring. Hey, tell me the temperature, and when it hits 100 degrees, I'll change the oil or something, through to applying advanced algorithms to that. So I can do predictive algorithms, I can do machine learning type algorithms and pattern recognition, etc., to help me analyze large volumes of data and predict before an asset fails, when it will, and therefore and maintain the asset at the appropriate time. We can actually then extend it even further in really getting into more material science, creating a very detailed, a high fidelity digital twin, and then applying things like fluid dynamics, thermodynamics, electromagnetic physics, and potentially structural dynamics to the digital twin. So now I can take sensor feeds and based on those sensors actually simulate in advance the behavior of the asset. For example, I could take a pump and I could simulate the corrosion and abrasion of the fan elements of the pump based on, for example, fluid dynamics and the particulate content of the fluid going through the pump. So this is more simulation, very advanced case of doing predictive maintenance. So this is the third kind of building block, if you like. So now what we have is we've centralized our asset intelligence. We're able to manage shared service operations in my company and actually collaborate externally with partners. I'm using strategy and performance to do risk-based maintenance and reliability-based maintenance. I've connected my assets through predictive maintenance and service. So now I can actually predict failure before they happen and use sensor-based condition monitoring. The final element of that, of course, is I need to deliver that intelligence to the field. And so what we have developed actually with Apple is SAP Asset Manager. This is our new mobile solution which wraps around both the ERP S/4HANA layer but also our SAP Intelligent Asset Management Suite so that I can deliver the type of intelligence I've talked about out into the field. The engineer can see geographically where the assets are, they can take the failure, they get all the failure mode information, they get all the manuals and updates, etc., directly from the manufacturer, and that's all coming through the Asset Intelligence Network to their mobile device. Now when we look at asset management, one of the challenges our customers face is actually how do I manage my investment in the portfolio, so the capital investment in my asset portfolio, when we look at utilities companies, oil and gas companies, actually very often there are very large budgets to invest in new assets. And the question is, where should I invest? Which assets should I replace? Which should I upgrade? Which should I overhaul, etc. And so SAP has a solution for portfolio and project management. One of the main use cases that this solution is adopted in SAP is for capital investment projects, so that I can manage the whole funnel from, what is the potential investments I need to make. I can constrain that based on my budgets and also my resources in terms of people, engineers, etc., to then really prioritize which investments are the most strategic and most impactful and bring the best return on investment. And this is the role of portfolio and project management, which is widely used in SAP's customer base in asset-intensive industries. So with that said, I'd like to summarize actually on this slide, because what you can see here is ultimately, to reduce cost, maintain my assets, extend the life of my assets. We're seeing the types of initiatives on the left of this chart. They begin with really standardizing my work order management processes, scheduling, mobile, etc., so that I can operate more efficiently. But then the top half of this chart is really what type of initiatives we can run if we have an intelligent asset management suite. This is what we're enabling now from SAP. Things like shared services, running assets as operations as a shared service, centralized and gaining the benefits of reduced cost and sharing that intelligence around the business. Collaborating better with suppliers and customers around assets and sharing that digital twin information and content. Adopting more risk-based maintenance strategies, and also the reliability-centered maintenance processes, which are very common, very effective business processes, and now we can actually standardize those inside SAP's software, which new capabilities ultimately from SAP, and we couldn't do this a few years ago. So with that said, I'd like to thank you. That's the end of this module in the Open SAP course, so module 6. And actually, we hope you enjoyed the course, right? This is the last unit of the Open SAP course for digital supply chain from design to operate. I hope you enjoyed the course, learned a lot of useful things, and good luck with finalizing your assignment. And in the context of module 6 and operate, if you want to find out more, if you have any questions, by all means, please do reach out to me. So that's patrick.cramptonthomas@sap.com. And we do our best to answer any questions you have. So thank you very much for your time.